boom, 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 boom. I'm not actually singing a song here. Well, hello, welcome. Look like you can. Okay. It's just kind of slow. Okay, not very helpful. Apparently, we're gonna have angry stuff going on today. All right. So today, welcome to everybody. Hello. It's Jer for CloudSec 9. Just decided that I'd go on and we'll do a quick tutorial. Actually, I think I've done something similar to this before. Apparently there was a burn down and they were going to get rid of these, so I did a couple quick ones, but it looks like they brought it back. I don't know if it's working. We'll see. All right, so let's click to launch the environment. While it's sitting there and launching the environment in the background, we're going to create a Kubernetes cluster. Kind of cool. All right. So we go. All right. So I think I've gone through and explained what this is. Sorry, invalid request was made. Let's see if we can. Maybe these are dead now. This is dead, and it's going to be a very short tutorial. Okay, let's go back here. Let's leave the page. Maybe it just didn't like it because I came and I was there and I came back again. All right. Usually takes a minute. Oh, look at that. Actually came up. So I think it was just because of the funny way that I reloaded it. Already installed Minikube for you. Alright. As I said before, probably the best way to do this, you can click on this and it'll type stuff in for you. But just because I like to sit there and do stuff and get like some muscle memory, I'm going to actually type in Minikube version. You can see the Minikube version. So I think I've told you guys this before in a different, not live stream. What Minikube is it's a Kubernetes distribution, right? Just like there's different Linux distributions, right? There's Ubuntu, there's Red Hat, there's I can't remember the name of it now. There's a container version of Linux. I can't remember what it's called. I want to say it's Ajax, but it's not Ajax. It'll come to me. Anyways, so there's a bunch of SUSE's, one flavor. There used to be an old-time flavor called Slackware a long time ago in a place far, far away. So there's lots of different Linux distros. There's Rocky Linux. There's another one. That's not the one I was thinking of for the containers, but there's a bunch of different ones. For Kubernetes, there's a bunch of different distros, right? So there's like things like you can run a Kubernetes distro just on your local machine. It's one instance, one node. It kind of simulates Kubernetes because I mean it's obviously not a cluster; it's just running on one machine. But I mean it kind of gives you the flavor. It lets you do all the commands. It gives you kind of an intro. Minikube is one of those. There's Minikube, there's MicroK8s, there's Kind, there's Rancher. I haven't used all of them, so I'm not sure exactly what the different pieces are. And I also have one that I run actually in a. I haven't run it in a cluster mode recently, but it is a cluster mode. All right, so let's see what other things it wants us to do. Oh, it wants us to start. Yeah, that would be helpful. Minikube start. All right, so you can see it's going to spin up. Actually, spinning up an old version of Ubuntu. All right, so yada yada yada. Now, generally, most modern Kubernetes will run in a VM, right? You have to sit there and start the VM to run Kubernetes. I've run Kubernetes a bunch of times in VMs. You can run it on bare metal. If you're running a big cluster, probably want to run it as close to bare metal as you can. All right, so here's our famous kubectl. All right, so kubectl stands for Kubernetes. Kubectl is control version. Now, kubectl version here will be different. I don't even know if we can scroll that far back. Here it's 1.18.0. It may or may not look the same. Kubernetes version. Now it'll spit out a bunch of things, actually, I forgot. So Kubernetes is a piece of client server software. So you, on your machine or on your part of the cluster, you're running a client, and then there's the server or the API. So you can see here, there's the client version, right, 120. Somewhere here that will be, oh, here, client version 120, sorry, server version 120. Now you can see actually the minor version, or the patch version, I should say, patch version is out a little. This one's .4, this one's .2. There can be a little bit of variety in your clusters, so that's all good. All right, now what else do they want us to do? Oh, cluster info. So cluster info. All right, so you can see the cluster control plane is running at this IP address on 8443. So 443 is the traditional place that SSL lives. 8443 is a common non-privileged place to run it. So our control plane is running there. kubedns is running the same 8443 API, blah, blah, blah. So this is an API route here, which is telling us where things are. So we can actually do some more info. Let's see if they ask us to do. No, they don't. All right, so let's just do kubectl get nodes. See what nodes there are. So there's one node in the mini cube. It's been up for about 2.5 minutes. That's kind of cool. Now I'm going to do something that I don't know if we're going to ask us to do, but I'm going to get pods. So nodes are the physical manifestations of the Kubernetes cluster, right? So if you had 3 places that you could run stuff, 3 CPU places, right? So those could be VMs, those could be physical machines, it could be 3 VMs on one machine, it could be 3 VMs on different machines, blah blah blah. That's how those would show up. Pods are where your containers are running. So your containers run in a pod, and the pods are deployed on the nodes. So let's see. So right now there's nothing running, so there's no pods. All right, so let's see. Okay, we're at the end of this. So let's just go on to module 2, because we've only been doing this for, we've been doing it for almost 10 minutes. Wow. All right, use kubectl to create a deployment. So I'm not going to read through all this for you, just because we're going to go quick. So I'm going to sit there and say, tell you just a high level what a deployment is. So a deployment is an application that you're putting out there. I think in this case, they're going to do a very simple application, which would make sense. Sometimes your application can be quite complicated, right? So you may have a database, so you'll have a database pod. You may have a web server or several web servers, so you'll have web server pods. You may have other microservices that are supporting your web servers. Those can sit there and have their own pods. So a deployment would be a package of all of the things to run your application. All right. Like I said, in the case here, I think it's going to be fairly simple, but we'll see. All right, so they go through quite an interesting diagram. I think I've gone through the diagram already. So, okay, their little mascot always reminds me of a certain serial guy. I'm not going to say him because I don't know if I'll get in trouble. So let's go start. All right, sleep one, launch.sh. So I guess sleep one is like to give it a chance to just do its thing. This is expected to take less than a minute. I could have talked about deployments here. So the thing is that usually when you put deployments together, you'll put them together in some kind of a declarative file. Generally, it would be a YAML file. I'm not sure how they're going to do it for us. We may do it imperatively. Okay, so I'll talk about declarative and imperative just quickly, even though we've got the prompt. So imperative is when we sit there and we start stuff on the fly, right? So I want a pod, so I say start this container with this pod, blah blah blah. What declarative says is you say what I want to end up with is a pod that's running like this, and then the cluster figures out how to make that happen. All right, so there's a little subtle difference there. There's a lot more work that we're doing on our part interactively when we do imperative. With declarative, what it is we build a file usually, generally a YAML file with Kubernetes, that will tell us. All right, so let's go. What's the first thing we should do? Kubernetes get help. Oh, I don't even have it in here. So kubectl get nodes. Actually, they wanted us to do get nodes help, but I'm just going to get nodes for just a second. And let's see, get nodes dash help. And you can see here, here's the help pieces. So you can show labels, how you can sort, templates. Now, these are all really good if you have like lots of things, like lots of nodes, right? You can see, you can get the output. You can use JSON, apparently. So most of the formatting that I've ever seen, or formatted files that I've ever seen, are in YAML format. YAML and JSON are fairly similar. There's a few more exceptions things you can't do in JSON, like you can't do any kind of comments in JSON, whereas you can in YAML. So that's kind of cool. All right, so we just do get nodes. Actually, they wanted us to do version. So we can say version. Now you can see here 120.2, the version is there. If I spell version, it would be better. Look at that. All right, and you can see here the client version's 120.4, and here it's 120.2. All right, so we did get nodes already. Let's do get nodes again. You can see this one is supposed to control plane in the master, so you can segregate some of these things, right? So you could have worker nodes that all their job is to run pods. You can have a control plane or a master where its job is to sit there and help control the cluster. Now, the master can run pods. If you have a big serious production cluster, you probably want to have a couple of pods, or a couple of nodes, that are dedicated to running the cluster, maybe even a failover, so you don't have a single point of failure. But anyways, all right, so what they didn't do is they didn't do my favorite, which is get pods. And there's nothing here. All right, so they're going to create something here. So you can see, now this is what I was saying. Remember, declarative imperative. This time we're going to tell Kubernetes what to do, right? Since we're telling it what to do, we're doing an imperative. So let's do kube control or kubectl create deployment. So tell it what we're creating, and then we give it a name, Kubernetes Bootcamp. That's what we're doing. And then we tell it what we want to do. So it's an image, right? The image is gcr-io/google samples slash Kubernetes dash bootcamp colon B1. Hopefully that'll work, and it does. All right, so it's created a deployment. Boom. So what it will do though is it will go out and it will fetch that image, and then it will spin that image up, and you can see here the image is running for 12 seconds. All right. So it tells you here what it's doing, right? So this is the magic of Kubernetes actually making something happen. So it's going to sit there and do all of its background tasks, which is to try to find some place to run. Well, I mean, I did mention that it's going to fetch it. So it's going to go to the repository, in this case, gcr.io/Google samples Kubernetes bootcamp. It's going to look for the thing that's tagged v1, version 1 of it. It's going to sit there and pull it down, and then it's going to spin it up somewhere. All right, so we can do kubectl get deployments, and you can see. So the name of the deployment, that's what we called it, right? So if you remember back here, we called it Kubernetes bootcamp. There it is, right? Since we didn't specify any additional pieces, what happened is it decided it was gonna spin up one, right? So sometimes we want to have more. We want to have more than one copy, right? In this case, we don't need more than one copy. We may want more than one pod of some kind, right? So like if we know that one pod can serve 100 people at a time, but we have like 200 or 300 people coming to our site in busy times, and it's coming up on a busy time, we may want to have a little bit more. Now in this case, the deployment is here. So up to date, 1, available 1, age 70 seconds. All right. We can see there's one deployment running, a single instance of your app. All right. All right. So, okay. All right. I see. Okay. Okay, so if we go back up here, let's see that we can click on get a terminal tab. This is important. This is just a big fancy thing. So really what we want to do is do this kubectl proxy, and proxy will start and it'll sit there, right? Now what we want to do is we want to check what's going on. So what we're going to do is we're going to start a new terminal. We'll open a new terminal. We'll spin up a new bash session here. There it is. Okay. What we want to do is we want to do that curl. Right. So you want to go curl. So for those of you who are not curl aficionados, I will tell you what curl is. Curl is a way to sit there and make a web request. Right. So give it a URL, HTTP, localhost. Right, localhost is just us, 1001. I think there's probably more stuff after that, /version. So we're going to ask the app. In this case, we're asking the application what's your version number. And you can see it's actually giving us a whole bunch. I think it's giving us the version of the thing. So now, interesting thing is we pivot back here. We should see that connection. No, apparently we don't. Okay, in the other Kubernetes that I've used, it actually does show when you get a connection coming through. All right, blah 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 blah. All right, so there's all of this stuff. So actually, in this case, I'm sure. All right. So I'm going to switch back to terminal 1 for a second. Terminal 2, sorry. Terminal 2. I'm going to click on this one. What did it do? Switch back to terminal 1. Alright, so what it is I'm going to that typed off into never. I think we can only type that into terminal 1. That's interesting. Alright, if we can only type that into terminal 1, let's type it into terminal 1. Alright, well, it puts a little check mark beside the ones that you've typed. Okay, so that you can see the name of the pod. The name of the pod is name, and it's got these numbers. So what it is this is the deployment, and this is the instance here. I'll just highlight it there. So you get a little bit of kind of a serial number, and I'll talk a little bit more about those if we get into the next piece. All right, so if we go back and let's pivot back over to here, and we're going to ask another curl question. So we're going to sit there and say API v1 name spaces default pods slash. Oh, that's why they had the pod name. Okay. It was probably meant for the same one. So let's see if we can, I don't know if we can copy this. All right, let's see. Copy it, we'll paste it in here. Look at that. All right. Oh, look at that. Okay, so a whole bunch. So let's scroll back and see what it says. A lot of stuff in there. Okay. I think it's going to go so far that it's going to be off the screen. Not quite. All right. There's the version one. Oh, and here's our curl. All right. So you can see kind is a pod, the name, generated name, the namespace. All right. So we'll talk about stuff like namespaces and things like that in some of the regular episodes. I think I might have talked about those already. Replica sets we've definitely kind of mentioned. So these are some of the parameters. You can see, it tells you a little bit about it. Now it's the date and time now. Who the manager is. So how's this working? So Capulets and Montagues and apparently Romeo and Juliet has weeded its way in here. So the it's too late, folks. Kubelet is the little piece that runs on every node or pod to sit there and kind of manage the container. So this is manager's kubelet, right? And it's looking for specific things in here. Okay, so I'll just briefly talk about volumes. So I don't think in the live in the streams we've talked about volumes. I did in the tutorials, but volumes are the way that you can have some place to actually write your data and read data from. Generally pods want their volumes to be immutable or read-only. They aren't all strictly read-only. Operating systems and other things have to have little places to do stuff from time to time. They open files, they write files, they cache things and things like that. If you have a database, it's obviously going to want to write stuff. So you can control where these volumes come from, where they're saved, and more importantly, where they're persisted or where they're kept for a long time. So in this one, it sits there and it just says, what the volume is. All right. Then there's the container, right? It tells you where the container is coming from. Mounts, restart policy. So the thing is, if for whatever reason it crashes, it will always restart. you can sit there, like if you're in development, you may not want it to restart, or you may want it to try again once and then stop. Termination grace period seconds, so give it up to 30 seconds if for whatever reason you want to stop it before you start killing stuff, right? So this way it allows it to kind of shut down gracefully. It has some other stuff. We'll talk about stuff like tolerations. I'm not an expert at tolerations yet, but I know a little bit about them. So you can see status phase running. Obviously, if you're doing a container and you're getting the container from an image and the image is not local, you may have to download the image. You may have to sit there and figure out where it's going to go, schedule, and then it should be running. And then after it's finished running, you should spin it down. So it will go through some of this. It's ready, true, boom, boom, boom. Container ready, pod scheduled, all that's good. And then there's a whole bunch of IP stuff, so that's the networking things. Let's scroll down over here. So then it also has, like over here, looks like it's a hash, and it's like an SHA-256 hash, which tells it it's got the right image. So if the image gets updated, you can make sure that the image you're running is the image you want to be running by checking the SHA hash. All right. Is there anything else that they want us to do? Okay. All right, then we're done with that. So let's go on to module 3. Kubernetes pods. We've already talked a little bit about pods. We talked about volumes, right? I've kind of hand-waved a little bit of networking. I'm not going to talk too much about networking. I know a lot about networking, but the networking in Kubernetes is not always straightforward. So we'll come back to this. Troubleshooting. So these are some of the commands. Actually, it's kind of cool. I think I'll do a little bit of a tutorial. Maybe I'll make a note of that on some of these, right? So get we've used a lot. Describe I haven't used too much actually myself. I have to be honest. Logs is immeasurably helpful, right? Because it gives you whatever the logs are of a container. So generally, if you're running like web server, you redirect all the logs for the web server to the containers kind of input-output mechanism, and then you don't have to go into the container to see the logs. You can see them through the containers standard in and standard out. That's not as easy to understand as I thought it was going to be when I started to say it, but logs basically lets you see the logs. We will go through a more detailed explanation in the day-to-days. All right. Last but not least is exec. So exec lets you actually run a shell inside of the container. So the thing is that you can examine files, you can check different things, you can change files. The only thing is you have to remember whatever you used as the base or whatever is being pulled into your image is what you have to deal with. So for instance, a lot of images, they don't have things like an editor, even VI. So the thing is you won't be able to necessarily edit files directly in the container. You can install VI, you can install something like that. Install Pico, I guess, for some people who don't like VI. You can install something like that, but you may not be in there to look at it. So the thing is you should be able to get into the environment and kind of look around and see. All right, so let's start the interactive tutorial. I should have done that before. Okay, let's just, all right. This will take a couple seconds. Now remember, Kubernetes, really what Kubernetes is it's an orchestrator, right? It's about orchestration, so it's about managing your different cluster pieces, right? So you can have a lot of pieces, or you can only have one or two pieces. That's up to you, right? So really, it's up to how granular or how big you want, right? So I mean, you could start with a monolith, like a lot of applications start as monoliths. The application does everything, right? That's normal. You can containerize that. You're not going to get a lot of the benefits of containerization by putting up a monolith, but it's a start. Then you can start to pull pieces out and make them into smaller services or microservices, and you can use your monolith to call the microservices. This is kind of a good way to do as a migration steps, right? Because you can sit there and write tests for the microservices. You can make sure the microservices all work. Then you can sit there and integrate them in with your monolith, and your customers won't see any difference. Your end users who are using your monolith won't be able to see anything. All right, so let's do kubectl get pods. All right, so there's a pod there. I'm also going to do get nodes. So yeah, now these are like my natural things that I always do as soon as I'm playing the Kubernetes cluster. I want to see what are the pods, what are the nodes, right? So the nodes tell me, again, my physical pieces. The pods tell me how my cluster is, what my cluster is running. All right. So here, go back here. Instead of get, we can go describe. Describe B. I can only put everything on the right side. All right. So you can see this is actually a little bit extensive. If I go back in here and grab this and come back up. All right, so you can see it starts with the name, gives you the node, right? When it started running. Like I said, I'm going to try to avoid talking too much about the networking stuff right up front. The container ID, right? So it's a Docker type of container, right? That's typical. And then this big long number here, usually either inside of Docker or out. Usually we only take like the first like 10 bytes of this big long alphanumeric number. It's a hexadecimal number. We only probably need the first 10 bytes. That's pretty unique, although it's not absolutely unique. So behind the scenes, it keeps track of the big long number that's absolutely unique, but we usually only deal with the first 10 because that one's pretty unique. On a per machine or per cluster basis, that will be probably good enough. Then it shows us the image and the image ID. So this is where it came from originally. It's running on port 8080. You can see it is actually running. Blah 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 blah. Anything that's mounted. Okay, let's scroll back down here. It has the volumes, and you can see it says normal, started container, created container image already present on the machine, failed for volume, failed to sync secret cache, that's okay, and then successfully assigned blah 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 to Minikube. So this is it for that piece. So it checked to see if it had to pull it. It said no, it's already here. I don't have to pull it. And then it sat there and figured out the. Actually, I'm going in wrong. I thought I'm going from bottom to top. For chronological, it's actually from top to bottom. So the first thing is it's scheduled, right? And then it assigned a volume so that it'll have someplace to actually write. Then it tried to mount a secret, but it didn't seem to make a difference. It tried to pull. It said, I already have that. Then it created. So what it did is it put the bits that would be needed. So remember, whether you're creating an instance in like something like EC2 for AWS, or in Kubernetes, if you're sitting there and you're creating a pod, you have to get the bits there to the machine, to the actual compute part, the CPU, and the disk drives. you have to get all the pieces. So the image has to be on, even though we have it in the cluster, it still has to be on the machine. Now, in this case, since we're using Minikube, the machine and the cluster are all the same. So, but it's important to know. All right, let's see what else. Show the app in the terminal. All right, so we're going to do kube control proxy again. Kube cuddle proxy, sorry. All right, and it's starting at 8001. I'm going to scroll up here. I'm going to start a new window. We'll let that spin for a second. We'll get the. And it switches back to terminal 1, of course it did. So that's not going to do anything because it's typing somewhere where it can't be seen. So let's do that again. Now, if I really wanted to, what I could do is, if I was in the right spot, if I was enterprising, what I could do is, I could. Okay, let's cut this, copy this, sorry. I could have cut and pasted it here. Instead, I'm going to type this curl command. So curl http localhost 8001 /API /v1 /name spaces default pods pod name. I'm going to have to paste here and proxy. Okay, move permanently. All right. Maybe I shouldn't have put that. No, doesn't make a difference. Okay. I'll view the container logs. All right, so let's go back to this first one. Stop the proxy. All right. So instead of proxy, we'll go logs. And for logs, we have to tell it which Kubernetes we're talking to. So let's tell it which one we're talking to. So we'll paste it in. All right. So remember, this is the name that we gave this deployment. This is the deployment ID, and this is, I guess I will call this the instance ID, right? So the thing is that if we were to lose an instance, this would change, but this will not. This will only change if we change the version. All right, so you can see. So if we do logs, you can see it says started. All right. All right. Oh, well, okay, so I could have done pod name. Oh, yeah. Do we do this? I don't think we can do that. No. Let's give it the pod name. All right. Oh, executing a command. All right. So let's do this. So go back up here. We'll change logs into exec. So that means execute. Back to the end. Now dash dash in Unix is generally a way to signal to a command that you're at the end of whatever the command is. And in this case, you're signaling to kubectl that you're finished your command, right? So env here will actually tell it what to execute. So we're going to execute env, which is the environment. It'll show us the environment for this container on the pod. Oh, that's what it is. All right, so I should have done for this one. Let's do dash dash env. I have to go back to the beginning. Go exec instead of logs. All right, and you can see here. So it's got a path, it's got a host name, service port, we got port blah, gives it the IP addresses, right? Code version, npm. Well, they're obviously using npm or node.js for this. All right. Oh, okay. So here's an interactive one. So we'll go back, and instead of env, we're going to use bash. But because it's interactive, we have to tell Kubernetes, right? So we have to go ti. So ti is T means terminal, I means interactive. So it means I want to talk to it in real time. So it will give us a bash command, and we're there, right? So if I do ls, I'm in a different spot, right? So if I like do ping www.google.com, which it may or may not work. It actually does work. It's kind of cool. All right, but I'm in a different place. IP. Cool. All right. So if we want to get out, oh, all right. So do an ls. If we do cat server.js, that'll show us where we are. Right. You can see Kubernetes cat. I got Kubernetes bootcamp back. Right. So does it have curl? Oh, it does have curl. Okay. Localhost 8080. There it is, right? Running on Kubernetes. There it is. It's executing this. All right, because we're in this. All right, so now if we're wanting to get out of the container, we just type exit. That'll bring us back here, right? So if I do IPA, right? This is a different set of IPs. All right, and that's the end. All right, I think I'm gonna stop here. I really like this this kind of environment. It's kind of a cool, quick way to kind of get your toe dipped in and get started. And you can see we did 3 quick modules. It's about 45 minutes, but we'll do some more. And if you like these, then I would highly recommend starting to look at some of my other videos. The 100 days kind of walkthroughs. I'm going to be starting those up again on a more regular basis. I've already got the kind of outlines for the next few. I think I've got 9 in there so far. So I hope to see you there. If you liked it, please do click like, hit subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will see you.